Good day and welcome to the Bloomin Bodhisattva podcast, brought to you by the Rissho Kosei-kai Dharma Center in Oklahoma City. I'm James.
I'm Alyx.
I'm Jocelyn.
And I'm Karin.
And we're
The Bloomin Bodhisattvas.
Today, we are going to discuss Buddhist causation. Now, we were supposed to get to the three seals of the Dharma, but this is kind of a preliminary discussion that will sort of set a lot of that up. And so first of all, let me clarify what we're talking about. So causation, sometimes you'll hear it called causality. These are really philosophical and scientific terms for what we call cause and effect. And so in the Western mind, we think of cause and effect in a very linear fashion. That one thing makes another thing happen, makes another thing happen, makes another thing happen, like little pool balls hitting each other. And this is how science kind of goes around trying to figure out how the world works. But in Buddhism, cause and effect is much more holistic. And we'll talk about what holism means here in a little bit. But how we're going to talk about this is we'll talk about causation from the outside, from the inside, and from in between things. And so that's going to be our basic outline for today. So first of all, let me just sort of explain what we mean by Buddhist causation. And so here's how it works. There is a cause. When it meets a condition, it produces an effect, and that effect leaves traces that also circle back around to the original cause. And that's how it works.
It's like tossing a rock into a lake.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk about all of these things in terms of how do plants grow.
Ooh.
Okay, very good. I like that. Okay, good. So, cause for a plant. What causes a plant?
Another plant.
Kind of.
A seed?
Yes, and
Water?
Well,
Sunlight?
not quite yet.
Soil, environment.
No, not yet. So, one thing at a time. What is inside that seed?
Potential for a plant. Or even
Say it.
plant-tential.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Don't act like you're annoyed by this. You say these kinds of things all the time.
Yeah,
Do
that
I?
was.
Do
I
I?
think our listeners would like actually hear your eyes rolling right then.
Yeah.
So, plant potential is actually contained in DNA. So, does every seed that falls on the ground turn into a plant?
No.
No.
All right.
But
so
they all have the plant-tential too.
indeed they do. So, that plant potential is in DNA molecule, which is there ready to spring into action in the spring, literally, see, because it's spring.
I'd
And,
slap my knee if I could.
all right, so
You got it, buddy.
it needs to meet the right conditions. And so what would that be for a seed?
Water.
Yes,
Fertile soil.
yes.
Sunlight eventually.
Yes, and all of those things, when everything is just right, there's a little signal that will make that seed germinate and burst into a plant. And that is the effect will be the actual plant. So the cause is the potential, the condition is the circumstances around the potential, like an opportunity for things to come into fruition, and the effect is the phenomena itself, in this case, say, a tree. Now, what are the traces that happened? Okay, so the trees come into bloom or whatever it does. What happens now?
The tree provides habitat for all the little critters.
Exactly.
Perhaps even food for said critters.
Exactly. What else?
It can provide shade to us on a hot summer's day.
Oxygen.
Oxygen, yes.
Yeah,
So it's
we need that.
yes, it's doing all kinds of chemical things. What else is a tree doing? So have you guys know exactly how root systems of trees work?
The trees are communicating.
They are. And so all of the roots beneath the tree, and that's one of the things about a tree is that the roots go as deep into the earth as the leaves and the branches go above the earth. And so all of the roots of all the trees in the forest or wherever it happens to be are intertwining and communicating with each other and affecting the chemistry of the soil. And there's a whole other little bio region going on under there.
Yeah, I once heard like a very good, I think, NPR episode on this about how like trees that come from like a certain tree will see that tree as like their mother tree or parent tree. And if anything happens to it, that parent tree will send out signals to all of the child trees. And they'll communicate with each other.
Very good. And so all of this is a way of looking at things holistically. So let's define that. So when you hear the word holistic, what do you think?
Jerk gently.
Very good. Karin, what do you think?
When things are interconnected,
Very good.
like our body, all the systems are connected to each other, or the tree.
So elaborate on that.
Visually speaking, things grow in a circular fashion, in a spherical helix, spirals, and not in a straight line.
Exactly. That's a very good way to look at it. We tend to be very focused on, this thing happens and that causes this thing to happen and that causes that thing to happen. But really, everything is happening within a context where everything is affecting everything else. And this is what makes Buddhist causality a really useful way at looking at the world. And so holistically, the word holistic literally means circle. And so when we talk about holistic, another way to look at it is a whole, as in like the whole thing. And so we're not taking anything out of this interconnected web of things and separating it out and looking at it in isolation. Instead, we're looking at how everything affects everything else. And that gives you a way of looking at Dharma. Way of looking at the world the way it really is. Not a bunch of separate little things that are all in their little bubbles, but things that are all part of this great web of interconnected activity. Okay, so let's come up with an example. So you talked about casting a rock into a lake. So how does that illustrate cause, condition, effect, and trace?
Well, first, the cause is someone throwing this rock in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
The condition is the rock and the lake itself. The lake being all watery, made of water,
Yeah,
things,
and the properties of water. Yeah.
Yeah.
things that lakes are made of. And rock is made of rock.
And the effect?
Is ripples. Perhaps it messes with some of the local wildlife, like fish.
Okay,
The
so
rock
those-
hits a turtle.
So those would be the traces. So the ripples go through the lake, and of course the lake is not just there in isolation. There are other things in it that are going to be, things are going to be stirred up by the ripples, or it might hit fish, or...
A turtle.
Okay, so wait. It couldn't possibly hurt the turtle, right? Because turtles got, shells.
The shells have nerves on them.
What? You can't just, knock on the little shell, and it's not like this little thing that's living in its house?
Come on, it's all bones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, they like their little turtle shells pet because they have nerves on them, and then it feels nice. Yeah.
Oh.
Give them a little shell massage.
Little pets.
That is adorable.
I want a turtle.
Couldn't be me.
You don't want a turtle?
No, I have. We have a turtle.
You have a turtle? Y'all have a turtle?
Yes.
We have for years.
What?
Its name
Since
is-
you've known me.
I've never known that you've had a turtle.
It's a clover.
Yeah, his name's Clover.
Where is he?
In Max's room usually.
Should we bring Clover in?
No, I think Clover's out at the moment.
Okay, we'll have to find him. He likes to crawl under things.
What?
So another example, I think we could talk about ecology and the environment and how that really, sort of illustrates, this Buddhist principle of causation. So there are problems with us looking at everything in term of looking at everything in terms of linear cause and effect, that if we do this thing, that thing happens, that thing happens. We don't see the overall effect of things. And I think climate change is a really good example of this.
Much like the ripples, it always falls away from the original problem.
Exactly. And there are what we often call unintended consequences of things.
Because we have less vegetation in the world, we have higher temperatures. That's the cause.
Mm-hmm.
We have the conditions of ice caps that are melting because of higher temperatures. And because they're melting, they're causing higher sea levels, which is the effect or the traces that are washing away coastal land masses.
And so all of this can be traced back to, human behavior and our inability to really see things in terms of the long term consequences. And so, all right, so it's the Iroquois Confederacy. Can you pronounce their actual name? Here, try it.
Haudenosaunee.
Nicely done.
Ooh, yeah.
So this was very common, I think, with a lot of tribal understanding of the world is making decisions in terms of how they would affect 7 generations hence. And so Buddhism is a very good way of kind of looking at how this works so that you're not sort of caught up with what's right in front of your face. And instead, you are looking at the overall consequences, how the ripples will affect other things, and also how those things will kind of come back to us. And so we had talked, I think, also about Chief Seattle. And so, Karin, do you remember some things that Chief Seattle sort of said about this way of looking at the world, or maybe our linear short-sightedness?
One thing he said was, what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. Also, I want to make a correction on that pronunciation.
Yes, go ahead.
It's Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Yes.
Very good. And so we often are really looking for our short-term gain and not really noticing long-term consequences. And this means that we feel like somehow what we do and what we get is separated from everything else around us in terms of time and space. And so this leads us to making very bad decisions. Why?
Because humans are buttholes.
No, not quite. Try it again.
Humans have their head up their butt.
All right, so you guys are probably really familiar with climate change and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what concerns do you have about, the future of humanity and, just kind of the path that we're on right now?
Severe weather changes. Just
So
because-
many concerns.
Yeah, there's just so much that
temperatures getting too high for us to even survive, or any other creatures able to survive.
Yeah, there's already deaths from how hot it's getting in other countries. And
Yeah.
not being able to really grow the food the way they need to.
Summers and winters getting more extreme every year.
Yeah.
Like that giant, what was it, a blizzard or the ice power outages that happened in Texas a few years back?
I mean, we had a bunch of ice storms in Oklahoma too.
Yeah. But ice storms are almost more usual for Oklahoma. It's more unusual for ice storms and power outages to happen in Texas.
That's true. And then
And
also the
people
sheer
were,
amount of
woefully unequipped for it.
yeah, and there's a bunch more hurricanes recent years, and Tornado Alley is shifting to different areas of the country. It's no longer really Oklahoma anymore. It's more
We were supposed to keep it contained.
literally.
And so we're really all trying to struggle to kind of wrap our heads around how to deal with these very, very complex interconnected problems. And I think, Buddhism's way of looking at causality in terms of, cause and effect and condition and all of that are really useful tools for us as we try to figure out how to make our way towards a better future. So the next aspect of causation that I want to look at is the cause and effect inherent in human birth. And so there's two ways to look at this. One is the traditional Buddhist way that incorporates karma. Now, we'll talk about karma in detail in another episode, but here's how it works. You, in your previous lifetime, accumulated karma. And before you were born, before you were conceived, all of that stuff from previous lifetime is the cause of your new birth. And it hits the condition of conception and being, a fetus in a womb. And the cause and the condition come together to create the effect, which is you. And that effect leaves traces, which means as you live your life, your birth, you're going to affect everything else around you, all of those ripples are going to come back and re-affect you. That is going to recreate a new karmic set of circumstances that will then go in after you die into your next birth, and that cycle goes around and around and around forever.
Until you reach enlightenment.
Exactly. So the other way to look at it is the non-karmic way. And that is to say that your DNA that was there in the sperm and the egg, when they came together, is the result of generations and generations that go back to all of your ancient ancestors for a long, long, long time, maybe even back before we were human, to our mammal ancestors, our lizard ancestors, maybe even our microbial ancestors. All of that information of those countless generations is contained in the DNA, which has evolved and contained the changes that happen in every lifetime is sort of recorded there. And then those come together. And so, of course, there are, thousands and thousands of sperm and there are hundreds of eggs. And only a certain combination is going to create an actual birth. And then that birth is going to have the influence of your culture, your environment, all of that then is going to have an effect on the DNA that you pass on to your children. And that's around how it goes around and around. And so that's causation in terms of human birth. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So now I want to talk about causation in between. So we've talked about it on the outside, like with plants, on the inside, like with humans. And now we're going to talk about it specifically between people.
The in-between side.
Yes. And so you can look at every encounter as going through the same pattern of cause and effect. And once you're aware of this, it gives you a new insight on how to interact with other people and with the environment. And so let's look at it. Okay, well, I'll tell you a story. All right, so when I was in my 20s, I was living in Boulder, Colorado. And one of the things that I really liked about Boulder is that it was very bike friendly. That you did not have to have a car. And there was a reason why I didn't want to have a car, and that's because I had a lot of outstanding traffic tickets in Texas. And so I thought, I just won't have a car, and then I won't get traffic tickets. See how it works? So I rode my bike everywhere, which was great, except when it was snowing and the roads were icy, and then it wasn't so great. But they passed a law in Boulder that said that you had to have a headlight on your bicycle. So I did what any broke, enterprising college student would do. I duct taped a flashlight to my handlebars. So apparently that was not what the law said. And I got pulled over for having a duct tape flashlight on my handlebars. And I was really pissed off. Because I was thinking to myself, the whole purpose of me riding a bike is to avoid policemen. And now I am here confronting a policeman yet again, even though I came here specifically to escape them.
The mortal enemy.
And we were kind of at the very beginning of this encounter, it was heated. Okay, he had me pegged as, some hippie, trying to avoid the law. I had him pegged as some fascist that was trying to, mess with me.
And of course, both of you were right.
Yeah, kind of. So we had stereotyped each other, and we were ready for a confrontation. And so he stepped away. I was upset because, why on earth am I getting pulled over for a stupid headlight? And then he walks away to go check out, my background in his car and look at me up at the computer. And I should, okay, well, I'm good because, I haven't driven in Colorado, so I shouldn't be in any trouble. So it's like, okay, I'm going to Buddhist school. I should practice the Buddhist thing, and I should just calm my mind the hell down, which I did. And so he was gone maybe 5 minutes. When he came back, I was okay. And for whatever reason, whether it was, body language or voice tone or whatever, suddenly he was okay too. And we shifted the entire dynamic of that whole conversation because I just decided to calm myself down. And so in the encounter, this created a space for me to understand here's how cause, condition, effect, and trace work. And once I know that, I can step into that process and make it shift into something different. And so this is what Buddhism does for me. And so by the time we were done, we were like buds. He was saying, hey, don't worry about this. The ticket's only going to be half price. It's like $10. Here's a place you can go to get a cheap headlight that'll be up to code. And we were going to go get beers afterwards. I don't know. We were like friends. And I do really feel that it was because I simply made a decision to not be angry anymore. And I don't know about you, but I have encountered this dozens of times throughout my life. I certainly do it with students. And so can you guys think of examples of when, you've like shifted a dynamic, an encounter in a positive way?
When encountering someone who is being on the offense, let's say, and provocative, if I remain calm, then that typically diffuses the encounter and it doesn't escalate into something bigger, more anger, more suffering. So, yeah, that's there's no payoff, and it usually, is a good way to de-escalate it. But overreacting doesn't ever help the situation.
I mean, typically when somebody's trying to provoke you, it's because they want a reaction out of you.
Is that what you mean by the payoff?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't really have a story like yours, James, but because I tend to try and not to be the emotional one in the situation. I always try to, if I am ever like getting emotional, I'd usually try to take a step back and say, hey, I am not in the right mindset to talk to you right now because I am upset and I will not be able to have a coherent and calm conversation with you. So I always try to take a step back and come back to it when I can be calm in the situation, be okay. And I also don't really get into situations where I would have to act on something like that and have to stay calm because I just try to avoid those at all costs.
So, you say that you're able to sort of see confrontation coming and you walk the other way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Because I guess I sort of had a lot of practice with that kind of stuff when I was younger, just because I had a relative of mine who was very, like to start fights, like start arguments. And so I can usually kind of feel it when it's coming on and try and stay away from it or just quickly change the conversation or just be like, hey, we're not doing this.
Yeah, I think we all get that word for word.
Yes, absolutely. And so can you think of a specific example, Alyx?
I mean, growing up, my brother would sometimes have very big emotional reactions to things. And a lot of times I would mostly stay out of them, but you kind of have to learn that when people are having big emotional reactions, it's always worse to get down on their level and get angry back, because that only fuels the other person's anger. And now you're just fueling each other for like a big yelling match, and that makes nobody happy. That makes me crying alone in my room because I hear people yelling outside.
Yeah, I
Real.
hear that.
You know, normal things from childhood.
Yeah.
So this brings us all into what Buddhism calls us being the primary cause of our own suffering. And let's be really careful about this, because a lot of times when somebody says you're the cause of your own suffering, you know, people tend to think, oh, why are you saying that I brought all this on myself? And that's kind of not what we're talking about. So give an example of how somebody could mistake being primary cause.
Well, a lot of times when bad things happen around me, I tend to fully blame myself for what's happening, because clearly I must have done something wrong to bring all of this bad karma upon me. Clearly I upset something or someone, because bad things can't just happen to people who did nothing wrong. That's not how the world works. That's not fair.
Exactly. I could think of some other examples. Karin, we were talking about, which hurricane was that hit New Orleans? Do you remember?
Katrina.
Oh, yes, Hurricane Katrina. It was a huge disaster.
Like
I mean, people were,
Tortilla.
yeah. So I'm sorry, say that again.
More like Hurricane Tortilla. I'm sorry, I had to do it.
No, I get it.
I had to take the chance.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
gotta get that goblin core vine energy.
Yes.
This makes
Don't
sense.
look at me like that, James. Don't look at me like
This,
that.
these words in that order definitely make sense to the other two people in the room.
I don't even want to know what you're talking about. I'm glad I don't know. So back to historical reality. One of the things. So, Karin, do you remember what Jerry Falwell said during all of that?
Yeah, the gays caused it.
Yes. So, of course, New Orleans is known to being a hotbed of sin and decadence. And so there was this
And
thought.
what's more sin and decadent than gay people?
Shoot,
Yeah.
I wish we had that power.
Yes.
You know how many hurricanes I would cause if I could cause hurricanes?
Chaos.
All right. So another example. I'm sorry, I can barely breathe. You guys are so funny.
Stop.
All right. So say when somebody gets really sick, I know that if all of us have probably either known someone close to us or known of someone who has gotten cancer. And the thought there sometimes is that, what did I do to bring this on myself? How am I being punished? And it could get really bad when, let's say you're in an abusive relationship and you're being abused emotionally or even physically, and think, somehow I deserve this because I've been a bad person. And so that's not what we're talking about when we talk about primary causation for Buddhism. Guys got it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what this understanding of primary cause does for us is realize how our own mind works and how, frankly, it often works against us. And so when something bad happens, let's think about it. All right, so what do we do inside of our own minds to make us suffer more than is necessary? This is going to be a common theme, but what are some things? Give me some examples.
Get upset, get angry at whatever caused this. Get angry at yourself, because obviously you caused this.
Right, so self-blame, yes.
Create self-fulfilling prophecies. Expect the worst out of things. Worry about things that haven't even happened yet.
Oh, self-fulfilling prophecy is a wonderful way to look at it. Just where before you even go into a situation, already tell yourself that everything is going to go completely wrong and that you are going to fail no matter what you do. And guess what happens?
you fail.
And
No matter what you do.
It's almost like the universe is listening to you and just says, oh, yeah, you think everything's going to go wrong? Glad to oblige.
And then after it happens, you ruminate. You just
Yes.
go over and over and over it in your head.
And
Think
so,
about it.
does everybody know what rumination is?
Yes.
Yes. It literally means like chewing your own cud. Yum.
Delicious.
Isn't it though? All right, so all of these things take what's already a bad situation and then exaggerate it out of proportion. And a lot of times we do that with pain and suffering all the time. So here's how it works for Buddhism. First of all, stuff happens. And when it does, you have an involuntary biological reaction to it. When you stump your toe, you can't go, aha, the pain is not real, stop thinking about the pain. When somebody hurts you, you can't go, aha, I'm not going to be hurt. You get hurt. When you're threatened, you're going to feel scared. When, someone, comes at you emotionally, you're going to have an involuntary emotional reaction to it, and there's really not much you can do about that other than to just kind of try to adjust your sensitivity levels as you go along. The second thing that happens is your reaction. And this is where you have an actual opportunity to not make it bigger than it is. But instead, we get very, very masochistic, honestly, where when something bad happens to us, it's almost like we want to just wallow in it and exaggerate it. It's almost like this is our right to feel really as much pain as possible. And how dare you tell me, oh, everything's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. Don't tell me everything's going to be okay. Of course, things are not going to be okay. I am miserable, and I'm going to stay miserable forever, and it's everyone else's fault. And then around and around you go.
I know some people like that.
I've been
Or
like
I'm
that.
going to be miserable forever and it's all my fault.
Yes. I mean, and we've all been there for sure. A lot, actually. And so this is our tendency to start habitually interpreting everything as a threat. And then you start going through life expecting bad things to happen, and of course that they do. So the way to look at primary cause is that it's actually very, very empowering. What it does is let us know that we have the power to step into our own mental states and adjust them as we go along. And there are actually...
Because if we can cause our own suffering, we can uncause our own suffering.
That is exactly right. And so Buddhism doesn't just say, oh, well, go take charge of your own consciousness. It's like, okay, here are the techniques for doing it. And as we go along, we're really going to explore what these techniques are. But the first is to just realize that that's a possibility, that you don't have to just go into some tailspin of emotional pain every time something bad happens to you. You feel the pain you need to feel, you react in the way that you need to react, but it's not something that's dragging you down. It's something that's happened, and then you can find a place to sort of create a space to shift that emotional response into something that's actually going to help you in it, or at least give you space to heal.
Like what you did with the police officer all those years ago.
Exactly. That's beautiful. We'll probably need to put an echo on that. And so...
little flashback sound effect.
Yes, exactly. Not only does this benefit us, but as we were talking about in that exact example, it benefits everyone around us. Because when we're emotionally overreacting, that has an effect on the people that care about us. And that effect can be really damaging, honestly. Because when people that I know are in pain and I want to help them, if they don't want help, that creates a problem for me too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Creates a barrier.
Yes. And makes me feel helpless. All right, so with all of this, there is an awareness that everything that you do has those little ripples that come out and affect the people around you. And not only do those ripples affect them, they bounce back and they come back to affect you as well. And you want to try to avoid this whole notion that you're just in this cycle of pain upon pain upon pain. All right, so how do you get out of this cocoon? One, you become aware that there is a way out. That is the very first thing. Next, you have some proactive ways of shifting your own emotional outlook. And so one of those things is what we call setting your intention. And so are you guys familiar with this word, with this whole phrase?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I have different ways of doing it. Karin, what are some ways that you sort of set your intention?
I just try to be mindful with whatever activity I'm engaged in, and try to look at it as, every day being a gift, and that it's not a mundane chore or an encounter, even sometimes when they're difficult encounters. We learn from those, or hopefully we grow from them. But I intend when I set my intention with whoever I'm encountering, my intention is to be kind.
And that, I think, will really get you through almost every situation. All right. So, everyone, be kind.
To yourself and others.
Thank you all for listening to the Bloomin Bodhisattvas podcast, brought to you by the Rissho Kosei-kai Dharma Center in Oklahoma City. And stay tuned for the next episode when, really this time, we will talk about the 3 seals of the law.
Arr, arr, arr.
Until then, our fellow bodhisattvas, keep
on
on blooming!
blooming.